This time on the Plutopia Podcast, Jon and Scoop engage in one of their notorious babble fests. We examine the ongoing ransomware attack at the Ascension Seton hospitals, solar flares, Sci-Fi, billionaire bunkers, polls, QAnon, and much more.
Biden and Trump are going to have a couple of debates, or Trump is going to have a couple of debates. Whether he will let Biden get a word in edgewise is another question.
Yeah, he's not real good at following the rules of decorum and debate. He just wants to scream and yell and interrupt. That's how the last ones all were.
It'd be cool if Biden showed up with a bunch of black guys carrying bazookas.
Okay.
Terrorize Trump for a change. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Plutopia Podcast. I'm here, Jon Lebkowski, as usual, and also, as usual, my partner in crime, Scoop Sweeney, is here, and we will be interviewing Jon Lebkowski and Scoop Sweeney today. We're just going to talk.
Talking is kind of what we enjoy doing anyway, so it's like you didn't really have to prod me to show up and talk. I enjoyed it.
Right on.
You seem to be quite well-versed in the whole talking thing as well, so I don't think we'll have problems covering a lot of space and time and subject matter, whatever you want to.
Yeah, I mean, it could be better probably if we knew what we were talking about, but still,
That hadn't stopped.
It's kind of a good thing. This particular podcast, we're just kind of miscellaneous, I think. Scoop has some things he wants to talk about, and I have some things I want to talk about. And we should start with yours, Scoop. You wanted to talk about the problems at one of our local hospitals.
Exactly. Ascension Seton is having a meltdown, actually since the early part of the month. And from what I've been able to determine, they still haven't fixed their systems. Their your computer system, their electronic medical records, all their computers are apparently being held hostage in a ransomware attack. And that's pretty bad for a hospital because for quite a long time, all hospitals, well, pretty much all hospitals in this country at least, rely on their computer systems. The medical records are no longer a paper thing. I worked for Kaiser Permanente's IT group in California, and we helped transition Kaiser Permanente from the Stone Age, basically, into the online data age, and that was really painful for them, because people who were just didn't want to let go of their paper, really fought back. And now we're seeing the same thing, or a similar thing happen, only it's in reverse. The people that have relied upon their computers at the hospital have no longer been able to access anything. Computers are being held hostage, and so are the patients. The patients are supposedly getting, unequal treatment. Some people are okay, but a lot of people are, not getting proper treatments. According to the article in the Statesman today, that they actually had a doctor that came in from Boston to live basically in her mom's hospital room. Mom had breast cancer surgery and was not getting any of the care that she's supposed to have. So the doctor is basically serving as a assistant to the staff there and keeping them, treating her mom. But you can imagine how bad it is for the people that are in there, and they don't have someone to help with their care. And so a lot of people are just, not getting their treatments. Apparently the ERs are backed up, and if you have an appointment, you may or may not be seen on time. So it's really a strange situation. And I don't know how long they're going to be held hostage, but something like this is happening more and more often. And in a medical, yeah, it's just one thing if they're attacking, the grocery chain or, a bank or something, that's bad enough. But medical care, that's so essential to, people's lives that just the idea that someone would attack that and hold it hostage is just beyond me of why people can justify that whatever their plan is, and nobody has said who's responsible. I doubt if they're going to confess.
Well, we know that they've used the ransomware called Black Basta, and this is not an Austin issue strictly. Ascension is a huge hospital system all over the U.S., and these attackers, whoever they are, managed to hit it pretty hard, affecting 140 hospitals in 19 states. And also, preventing access to electronic health records. And this apparently started a few days ago. Like I'm seeing something that mentions Friday the 10th.
Yeah,
but I think it had happened before that.
Yeah, the 6th was mentioned in the statement article, and that's a long period of time to be, to have your systems basically non-existent. And, that's, from my days in medical IT, that just frightens me because I've seen what happens when you just have a little outage. We had a few, minor outages that, brought the system down for 6 or 8 hours. And that was horrifying. But when you've had it for weeks, that's just, I can't wrap my head around how bad that is.
Yeah, and it doesn't appear that they've made any moves in the direction of actually paying the ransom. They're trying to recover. They've hired a firm that handles cybersecurity recoveries, and they're trying to handle it that way. But this is kind of an amazing thing, really. It was a fairly complete disruption. I'm kind of looking around to see. I can't really find anything that says exactly how they got in, and they may not know exactly how they got in.
Yeah, it's just amazing though the fact that they did the fact they haven't paid the ransom is good, in that it doesn't encourage people to continue the ransom attacks, but recovering your system from scratch may or may not be good because it really depends on what they're recovering it from, what kind of backups they had. Hopefully they had mirror disks that ran on their systems. That's what we always did at Kaiser, is we ran on a tandem system, which had multiple mirror disks that, you could bring.
Yeah, hot backups.
Yeah, just, constant. But, that's an expensive prospect, and smaller hospitals, I doubt, would have that kind of IT setup.
So they've hired a company called Mandiant, which is a cybersecurity company. And this is a company that, it's been around since, I think, like 2004. So it's about 20 years old. And they have the expertise required to address something like this, but it sounds like this has been kind of a major thing that might be hard to address. Mandiant is owned now by Google, I believe.
Yeah, it's just frightening to anybody that has a medical problem that your doctor may or may not be able to tell you or help you anytime soon because apparently the backups there at the Central Texas Ascension facilities have been pretty severe, and the Del Seton where my wife had her some serious trauma treatment. It's the only level 1 trauma care
Yeah.
hospital in Central Texas, and you know they're having severe problems, and the pharmacies can't even help the people because the pharmacies are all online, and so they're actually having to arrange for people's prescriptions to be filled by someone outside of the Ascension Seton setup, and that's I can't imagine how you could accomplish that. Something about you know prescriptions that are for controlled substances. I doubt that would be able to be addressed that way because of all the legalities.
Yeah. Well, and I guess it's a pretty good question. You had talked earlier about whether this was a state cyber attack, i.e., Russia or China or some combination. And it's a good question whether when something like this occurs, whether it's strictly a matter of greed, a matter of trying to get that ransom, or whether it's an attempt to cause more disruption. And one thing that's very clear to me is that particularly Russia under Putin has been involved in disruptive activity all over the world, and particularly in the U.S. And you can see what a mess they've made of our political system.
Mhm.
And I don't think that they would have any qualms about attacking medical systems and, what else might they attack? Air traffic control systems, energy systems, the energy grid, which is somewhat antiquated in much of the country. We do have these vulnerabilities. And another thing that came up recently was the solar storm that we had, which caused northern lights pretty far south. I think as far south as right here. I mean, I think some people in the south part of Texas were able to see the northern lights in this particular situation. But the solar storm also has the potential to cause geomagnetic interference that would disrupt and maybe even collapse some of our information systems.
Mhm.
And we rely on those information systems. I mean, you can see this with the hospital thing. We have such complete reliance on computer networks and information systems. The idea of those being just kind of wiped out and rendered inoperable. Plus, I mean, you can imagine what would happen if all the cell phones, all the smartphones crashed. What would people do? They would be staring into space, drooling. They wouldn't have any idea what to do with themselves.
That would be my response, basically, because I depend on all sorts of devices. It's interesting that Elon Musk's Starlink system had severe damage to some of its satellites, and they have, actually they are responsible for 60% of the stuff circling the Earth in orbit, and Starlink is providing internet service to people in different parts of the world, including this area. And when it's interrupted like that, that's some serious damage there when it can black out a communication satellite.
Yeah, 40 of Starlink's satellites were knocked out of commission. Apparently, they were knocked out of the orbit that they were in, and they're going to crash back to Earth. And who knows how long it'll take to replace those satellites.
Good Lord. That's reminiscent of some of the old sci-fi movies where, people were being rained upon from outer space, well, from near space there with falling satellites. And, now we really will probably have something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a sci-fi movie right now.
Yeah. And I'm not enjoying parts of this movie. Some parts are
Yeah.
humorous, but as long as it doesn't uh, affect me, I can chuckle. But stuff like this, it affects everyone.
Dystopian fiction. Yeah, I was recently watching Fallout on Amazon Prime, which is a futuristic. Well, it's not. I mean, I don't think it actually starts as a futuristic thing because the initial their atomic bombs are like kind of going off everywhere, and this is in the 50s, and then you move into the future.
Sounds like an alternate universe kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a kind of desolation, and what it is my understanding, having watched the first season of this thing, is that a bunch of fairly greedy people came together to set these bombs off, and they were going to place their people in bunkers underground so that they'd wipe out pretty much everybody else except for the people they had selected. And they did wipe out quite a few people, but there's still a lot of people living on the surface, and it's kind of a crazy world. It's based on a video game. I was quite fond of this thing, and I don't know how many episodes I watched before I realized that it felt very realistic.
Yeah. Well, talk about realism. All the billionaires, not all of them, but a lot of the billionaire class are building their own bunkers and their own retreats where if you're not one of them, you get to live there. They have some people that have bought islands and are having exclusive, rich guy or rich girl parties there. And then the whole idea is, when the apocalypse comes, they'll have their bunkers they can hunker down in and survive the apocalypse.
They'll be bonkers in their bunkers.
And that's for sure. Because I remember the whole Cold War thing of everyone getting a bomb shelter. I knew people in our hometown who had bomb shelters. They actually had a bomb shelter in front of the one of the fire stations in Big Spring. And the Boy Scouts, we were trying to let us live underground for a week or so just to, show off and be weird. And they thought that was a bad idea, for the Boy Scouts to be hunkering down in a bomb shelter. I guess it's bad PR for everyone.
Yeah, and of course those shelters were fairly cramped, and there's no way that you could store enough food, etc., in there to survive. They were kind of tiny. My uncle had a bomb shelter in his backyard. That was the only one that I ever encountered, and it was about the size of the room I'm sitting in right now. No, it's smaller than this, really about half the size of the room I'm sitting in right now. I don't think you would be able to. You'd probably go pretty much nuts, if you were stuck inside of that thing, especially with 4 or 5 other people, even if they were family members.
Yeah. Get 4 or 5 claustrophobics in there, and it'd be the end.
And I don't,
for sure.
I don't recall seeing a restroom in there.
You're living and you're going in a bucket, for a few weeks. You'd probably just want to go in, breathe in that radiation and end it, because that would.
Well, I think the assumption was that you would just hide from the blast and then come right back out, and they hadn't really kind of got the message about fallout.
Yeah, well, that was back in the day when they were selling medical treatments where you go to a roadside stand that has radioactive dirt that you can roll around in, and it's supposed to cure you of your arthritis or acne or whatever it is. And those were popular until people realized they were killing themselves with the radio.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
it
my
was
God.
real radioactive dirt.
Well, I don't know. I I look back on that and I think about how kind of wrong we were to. I mean, nobody was really willing to set off a bunch of atomic bombs, and even today, I mean, Putin's sitting on a bunch of nukes and he's not using them. I think it's well understood. I would think that pretty much that doesn't just wipe out your enemy; it wipes out your planet.
Yeah, mutually assured destruction basically is what it was based on.
Yeah.
That's how you keep everybody from invading everybody else. Is you're all so armed to the teeth that nobody wins. But that's a poor solution to the problem. But that's kind of what they have. That's why we still have huge stockpiles of atomic of nuclear weapons.
So I've got a pet peeve here that I've been wanting to talk about,
Well, Piva wasn't.
and that is polls, political polling. And the problem that I have is not, I mean, it makes sense to take polls and it makes sense to kind of get a take on where things are and where things are going, that sort of thing. And if you're a political operative, you certainly want to use polling to kind of understand where the political horse race is at any point in time. And if you're a journalist, you kind of like to get that information to feed into your reporting. And that makes sense for it to feed into your reporting. The problem I have is when polls become the news, when polls are reported as news. I mean, every poll is just a survey of what a finite set of people think. And I know that there are scientific methods to try to ensure accuracy, as much accuracy as possible. But the only way you know what everybody is thinking is to survey everybody. You can't really take a sample of people and assume that you can generalize from that to this much broader set of humans. And I'm thinking about how, we have polls that say, I saw one today. Okay. The one I saw today, and it's a problematic news story that we might want to talk about too, but New York Times has a headline that says 17% of voters blame Biden for the end of Roe versus Wade.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Who did that?
I mean, well, but look at the problem with that headline. It's crazy to say 17% of voters blame Biden for whatever. What you should really say is 17% of likely voters polled blame Biden for the end of Roe. Talk about the percentage of the people that were polled. It kind of makes your point that there's kind of an indication there, but this makes it sound like 17% of all the voters in the country are blaming Biden for the end of Roe. Okay, I think that's questionable anyway.
Yes.
It says, I mean, who would blame Biden? How likely is it that people, even 70% of the people, would blame Biden for the Dobbs decision? The Supreme Court, the right-wing Republican Supreme Court, made a decision and it was Biden's fault. The same poll says that 6% of Democrats, including many who want abortion to remain legal, and that's fairly common among Democrats, say they trust Mr. Trump more to handle the issue.
I think that's more of a statistic for insanity.
Well, it's an insane statistic. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with polls, is that polls get it wrong. And if you dig into the methodology, for instance, on this latest Times Siena poll that said that Trump was leading in all but one of the battleground states, I guess. But if you dig into that poll, and there's been some conversation about this online, it was heavily weighted to conservatives. They talked to more conservatives than they did to people who identified as liberals. And that is necessarily going to skew the poll results. Yet they reported that poll as though it was an accurate take on those particular states.
Well, anybody that's ever dealt with statistics, trying to, understand some issue using the statistics, you can make it say anything you want just by messing with the way you present the statistics, the way you graph it out. Never trust these graphs that they'll show with some polls. And it just depends on how you can make a graph say that I've got a great I've got great hair. Scoop has great hair. My hair sucks. But you could do your own study. It's 9 out of 10 Texans say Scoop Sweeney has great hair. It's like, who are these people? And
well, you do have a nice ponytail.
Yeah,
I'll
that's about it. My hairline started going backward quite some time ago. But what I'm really saying is that this polls. I mean, it depends on who's doing the poll and why they're doing it, and you have like 1,000 people they talk to. It's who selected those 1,000 people? Or did you go to a mental hospital perhaps and get 1,000 mental patients? Who knows where these polls are getting the people to say what they really believe. Or a lot of people will say shit just to mess with the people asking them, what they think. I've gotten that kind of thing, back when I was interviewing people on the street, and they just say stuff just to mess with me.
Yeah,
happens
exactly.
with those polls, so they're not that reliable.
Well, and everything that you read is just somebody's take, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all filtered through human perception and judgment. There's no there's no 100% reliability. There's no assurance of that in any reporting that you see, any so-called news that you see. You got to take it all with a grain of salt, and sometimes you have to take it with a pillar of salt. And even your own head. I mean, everything is potentially wrong, right? What do we even know? What do we? The best we can do is we can kind of try to make a pretty good assessment or a pretty good judgment based on what we definitely see and what sounds reasonable to us. Which makes it weird to me that you could have like some of the things that you hear from the QAnon folks.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to be, I hear that there's kind of a resurgence of the QAnons. And they have some pretty crazy ideas, and I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know how to. I don't know how to get my head around the idea that people actually believe those sorts of things. I mean, it seems like what they call a LARP, a live action role playing game. So I could get that if people are like kind of playing around, and this stuff that they're saying, the QAnon myths, the Q drops and so forth, they're just a game. They're just people having a laugh. But I don't think that's the case. I think there's people who are actually believing kind of weird shit. They believe that what was the original thing? It was the Democrats were pedophiles. They were,
Oh, the pizza place.
yeah, they were taking the blood from, they were bleeding children to get adrenochrome, and they were running the thing out of a pizza place in Washington, D.C., out of the basement of this pizza place that didn't have a basement.
And somehow Hillary Clinton was involved, according to some of those people. It's like, say what?
Oh, I've heard some really weird stuff
Yeah.
about Hillary
Well,
Clinton.
well, people believe what they want to believe, and remember when Obama was elected the first time, the meltdown that happened live on the air on Fox News when what was it, Karl Rove that was ranting and raving because it just couldn't be wrong. That just couldn't be happening because their polls said that you know Obama would not win, and
They polled people and found that people believed that Obama was black, and they thought maybe that meant he wouldn't be elected.
okie dokie. Depends on where you ask that question, I guess. Also, but people just love to. There are people, myself included, who have been known to be sarcastic and say things that aren't really the case, but just they like to mess with people. I've done that a few times, but it's not. It may not be right, but the temptation to screw with someone just by saying some sarcastic remark, it's hard to resist.
Do you remember Wild in the Streets?
Wild in the Streets.
Wild in the Streets. That was a movie that was released in the late '60s. I think it was 1968.
Oh, was that a
And it was
Roger
a
Corman extravaganza?
I would not be surprised if he was involved with that. I think it was definitely an American International picture.
Oh, yeah.
It was directed by Barry Shear, actually. But in this film, there was a pop singer named Max Frost who like fires up a revolution. And this is where the thing came from about like putting LSD in the water supply. I think that was one of the things that they were doing in this movie. And I'm kind of coming back around to that. I'm starting to wonder if they're not putting LSD in the water supply in some places, and that might explain QAnon.
I don't know. It was back in the late '60s, early '70s. You would think, I was living in Berkeley around that time, and you would think that there was LSD in the water supply, but mostly it was just people were handing it around. So who knows which drug those people are on it? But if you follow QAnon's development, it's very strange. And from what I've read, QAnon kind of disappeared or died or whatever. But you're saying it's coming back. That just frightens me.
Well, I've heard people say that it's kind of coming back, but I don't know. I mean, is it really QAnon, or is it just people,
or is it just
like
Marjorie
mimicking
Taylor
QAnon,
Greene?
or what is it?
She,
Yeah, I mean,
she's a walking QAnon, right?
yeah, she's a walking Q drop, isn't she?
Yeah, I
Well,
can't.
I mean, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just can't wait till the next Marjorie Taylor Greene uproar because she got seriously smacked down on her some of her latest escapades in Congress. But the fact that people like that just keep coming back for more, I mean, it's just amazing the links you'll go with to, be crazy, I guess. That's the only thing. I don't know if she has a chemical imbalance or what.
You also see interviews with, kind of man on the street interviews or person on the street interviews with various people who really don't seem to have a clue what is going on. And they don't have any understanding of politics. which I guess isn't too surprising. I don't think we have civics classes anymore, do we, in
Yeah,
high schools?
we, in our high school, we had government, it was called, and civics. And I've not heard anyone in this time that has ever even taken a government class. I think that was, it might be an elective. It was a required subject when I was in high school, actually in junior high.
And it occurs to me Christians don't apparently know very much about their religion anymore. I read recently that there was a pastor who wrote that people were coming up to him after he gave sermons and complaining to him that that they that they didn't like the sermon because it talked about things that they perceived as weakness. And it would be he would be talking about the Sermon on the Mount. He would be talking about Christian teachings, and they say, well, those things don't really work for us anymore. The way Jesus was, he was too weak. And it's like, if you've decided that you don't believe in or follow the teachings of Jesus anymore, how can you at the same time say that you're a Christian? And apparently, in order to be a Christian, you don't really have to buy anything that you've read about Jesus. You say, well, I'm a Christian, but I really don't believe in that guy.
Yeah, he was, a dark-skinned Jewish gentleman who would hang out with the common folk and really was opposed to people doing commerce in the temples. And he threw, the story of casting out the people, the money changers from the temple, and boy, that goes against everything that conservative Christians are. They wouldn't invite Jesus in for dinner, much less to be their Messiah.
Oh, I've run across something here that explains what happened to QAnon. It became the Republican Party.
Oh, well, duh.
I mean, it's kind of been folded into the Republican Party, so I guess it's true. I mean, we saw the leaders of the Republican Party show up in court this week to support the guy that they want to elect president. And it's kind of odd. I mean, you wouldn't think that he would be their guy, especially since a lot of them profess to be Christians, right? Well, but that's weak. We're Christians, but that's too weak. What we would prefer is a guy who ignores laws, has no qualms with like sexual assault. That's strong. It's really strong to commit sexual assault. It's really strong to tell judges off and say that the laws don't apply to you. What we want is a guy with the strong like that. We don't want some weak guy who thinks he's going to obey the laws and treat women well,
Yeah, who wants a guy that abides by the laws and by the rules of society? That's definitely not happening in the Republican Party. And those guys showed up at all the VP contenders showed up at Trump's trial, all dressed like Trump, the red tie and
yeah, I saw that.
And the poorly fitting blue suit. It's like, come on, people. And, that talk about pandering, just sucking up to Trump for, a job interview, I guess.
See, I mean, I think really we ought to get these guys out of there. And I'm tempted to say let women run the country. But then when I say that, I think about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I kind of wonder.
Let's just have a sane person run the country.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have that right now, right? And he's unpopular because he is a little bit too sane.
Yeah, being normal will get you rated unpopular because people want somebody who's, will stand out and stand up and
Flashy.
yeah,
Gold, lots of gold.
yeah. They like the Hollywood approach to politics, extreme and over the top.
I heard the other day that, of course, there's rumors that Trump has to wear adult diapers and that he's got a problem with his bowels, I guess. And apparently they are now selling solid, well, gold colored anyway, diapers at Trump rallies.
Good. And
And they're selling T-shirts that say, real men wear diapers.
oh Lord, this
You
could
didn't
be
know
one of the
about
signs.
that?
This is one of the signs of the apocalypse. I'm convinced. I think it's all over. We're gonna be replaced by the cockroach any day now.
Let me see here. I'm trying to see whether this. Oh, yeah, there we go. Hold on just a sec here, and I will just show you. There it is.
Oh, good.
Diapers over dims. Real men wear diapers.
Yes. Okay. That's it. I'm going to start selling all my stocks there. I think it's time to cash in and move to the billionaire, bunkers somewhere in Wyoming. But anyway, that's just kind of how culture is going. Stuff that used to be considered just normal and boring is now considered sinful. You're sinful. If you actually say anything that good about Biden or any Democrat, you're an actual sinner, and people get ostracized from their church or their group just because of their politics.
Well, I can say something good about a Biden appointee, Anthony Blinken. Anthony Blinken showed up at a club where a punk band was playing and joined the band, grabbed his guitar, and they launched into a Neil Young song, "Rockin' in the Free World," I think it is.
Okay.
And he was pretty good,
Well,
And he made a little speech before they played the song.
well, you remember that we had a president that tried to play the saxophone poorly.
Well, he wasn't too bad. There was
He was no David Sanborn.
what was that name of there was a Republican operative who was known to be a pretty good blues player. I'm trying to think of his name. He died years ago. Can you hear my tapping of the keys? Because I'm
Yes.
typing. Lee Atwater. I found him.
Oh, okay.
Lee Atwater was known to be a pretty good guitar player. And he unfortunately kicked the proverbial bucket. I think he died in like 91 and he was 40 years old. He had like brain cancer, which is something I think follows Republicans around. And I think I seem to recall that when he died, he sort of repented of some of the stuff he had done. He like felt bad about his political operations, which were maybe not always entirely ethical.
Yeah, that's something that happens with a lot of people when they get closer to the end. They suddenly realize, well, if there is a hell, I'm going to probably go there because of the stuff I've been doing, especially politicians. Boy, talk about dancing around the gate of hell. A lot of them are.
He said, "My illness helped me to see that what was missing in society and what was missing in me, a little heart, a lot of brotherhood. The 1980s were about acquiring wealth, power, prestige. I know I acquired more wealth, power, and prestige than most. But you can acquire all you want and still feel empty. What power wouldn't I trade for a little more time with my family? What price wouldn't I pay for an evening with friends? It took a deadly illness to put me eye to eye with that truth, but it is a truth that the country caught up in its ruthless ambitions and moral decay can learn on my dime. Well, they didn't learn it.
Nope, not at all. And we know a guy in the White House that used to be in the White House that definitely hasn't learned anything from his past, and still denies it, even when he's going to court in so many different venues. It's like after the second or third indictment, you'd think someone would think, maybe I'm not a good person, maybe I should change. But no, it's all Biden that's doing it. It's the Democrats that are.
Well, I mean, that's really the problem with Trump is not that he's a Republican or a conservative. He's not a conservative.
Yeah, he's none of the above.
He's just basically a grifter, and he's an unethical guy. He's a narcissist. He doesn't care about anybody. I mean, I'm not like a super progressive liberal sort of person. I'm kind of a centrist and maybe even a little conservative about some things. But I am completely opposed to yet another Trump term.
Mm.
And
the Trump term will probably end the democracy as we know it.
So I was thinking today, would I be okay with Robert Kennedy? Would Robert F. Kennedy be okay as president? And of course, no, he wouldn't be. But because he's kind of crazy. I mean, he's a little bit nuts. And this whole anti-vax thing is a terrible thing, really.
He blamed it on the brain worms, and there may be something to that, judging how his brain is failing to operate.
Well, when we were kids, like vaccines were saving lives. They gave us the polio vaccine, and how many of us, avoided either terrible illness or even death because we took the polio vaccine.
Yeah.
And there were many other vaccines after that, and now these mRNA vaccines are a real advancement. Of course, everybody's frightened of these things. They think that it'll leak into your DNA or something like that.
Yeah, I remember getting the polio vaccine, and I knew kids who had polio, and it was terrifying. It's like, I would get that. And it was just a thing you had to do. And I didn't see any parents keeping their kids away. You couldn't go to school without, having had your vaccines. They were very clear on that. And now they're trying to get the schools to say, no, you don't have to have any vaccines, just leave it to the parents. It's like, no, knowing how a lot of parents don't give a crap, they just let the kids go and infect the whole world.
Well, that's it. I mean, the problem with just leaving it to the parents and letting some kids be vaxxed and others not is that the kids who aren't vaxxed will be carrying the disease around and spreading it around. And vaccines aren't completely perfect. I mean, we know that a COVID vaccine doesn't prevent you from ever getting COVID, and we know that viruses can change their strategies and find other ways to infect you. But you're much better off with the vaccine. I know that when COVID first appeared, old guys like me were dropping like flies. Mm-hmm. But by the time I got COVID, and I had been vaxxed like 7 times, it was like a bad cold. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't that bad.
Well, that's what vaccines are supposed to do, is make it, because there's no perfect vaccine. There's always someone who's going to get it anyway. And by having the multiple vaccines, you benefited from that. The people that refuse to get even one, those are the ones that are no longer with us.
Yeah.
But they're predicting possible another pandemic with the bird flu.
Yeah.
And that's possible because those kind of things can migrate over to be infecting humans. Some humans have been infected, but it had to be someone who was really constantly with, birds of some sort, mostly chickens. And
Yeah.
it's still spreading around. They've had to, euthanize millions of chickens at various poultry operations.
I don't know. Maybe we're just kind of approaching the end of this human experiment. Um, I think about what the summers are like now, and the climate change and you know, I don't know about you, but I've had just terrible allergies this year,
Oh,
way
absolutely.
worse than ever before, and that's because of climate change.
And you can look anywhere and you'll see a sign of climate change. You look for monarch butterflies. They're
Yeah.
remember we used to have tons of them showing up, and I've only seen a few come through. We used to get them on my property here out in Bastrop County, and I'd have monarch butterflies all over the place. And when I would drive down I-10 on a trip, I used to encounter streams of butterflies that were coming up from Mexico. I actually drove through one and slowed down really, slow to, avoid, killing all these butterflies. They're just magnificent. And they just get fewer and fewer. And they're not the only ones, there are birds that are endangered now. All sorts of examples of climate. Uh, go to the oceans. The oceans are suffering mightily. Coral reefs are dying all over, and
Yeah.
and there are politicians say, no, it's not happening. It's just temporary, and it'll get better. Just vote for me, and it'll get better. Okay, right.
We'll deal with it. We'll engineer our way out of it. Oh, it's very frustrating.
Yep. But someone will, I'm sure, come up with a conspiracy theory to cure it all. Yes, if you vote for Trump, he's going to mobilize the armed forces, and they're going to go out and attack climate. It's like, okay, well, call me when that happens. Trump's going to cure it all.
Ah, well. Can we think of any positive notes to end this thing on?
Positive notes. Let's see. Well, I just got a new smoker, and I'm probably going to be contributing to climate change. But it's really good, and I've been making some great stuff. So if you want to have a big smile, come let me cook for you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think it's time to make another brisket.
Yeah,
Um,
I just did one, and it was wonderful.
Summertime. Summertime used to be such a joy.
Yeah,
Of course,
now
when you're a
it's
kid, that means you're out of school for the summer, and that's kind of a plus.
yeah. Well, it looks like we're going to possibly get into a La Nina. I think it is. We're verging upon that, and that's going to really change the weather for us. And
What will the effect of La Nina be?
I think it's wetter and not as cold. Um,
Hmm.
I may be wrong. I've been wrong many times, but
I would like to see it be colder. I would like to see it be
well,
very, very cold.
I'd like for the summer just not to be endangering everyone because
Yeah, yeah.
we grew up in West Texas, and 100-degree heat was no big deal. I was raised under it. But when it
Don't
gets
want
to
summer to do me in.
115, it was ridiculous. So let's hope that's stays away. I can do without the 115-degree heat. That's like being in Arizona. God forbid I would be in Arizona.
if we had a little bit more moisture, I think it would be at least kind of bearable. But there's not just heat, but last summer was very dry,
Yeah.
extremely dry. All the greenery was like turning brown.
Yeah, I lost a number of trees because of that, because the post oaks out here in my property, they were getting to, pretty poor looking trees, and some of them just died just because. And I asked the arborist that I know, and he said, yeah, it's just a lot of trees are either dying from oak wilt or just from lack of water.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they need a lot of water to hold off the oak wilt, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well.
That's
I'm
life in the new age.
I'm looking for something positive to in the news stream here, and I'm not finding much. I do see that Biden and Trump are going to have a couple of debates, or Trump is going to have a couple of debates. Whether he will let Biden get a word in edgewise is another question.
Yeah, he's not real good at following the rules of decorum and debate. He just wants to scream and yell and interrupt. That's how the last ones all were.
It'd be cool if Biden showed up with a bunch of black guys carrying bazookas.
Okay.
Terrorize Trump for a change. Oh well. You remember Trump's Proud Boys thing? I was thinking about that in that last debate. Stand back and stand by?
Yeah.
Stand by and be ready to attack the Capitol.
And they did. And
Yeah.
now they're all, he's promising to give them all pardons and get them all out of jail because they were patriots. Back when I was growing up, patriotism had nothing to do with trying to shut down the government and attack police officers. That was considered a no-no.
Well, back at the very beginning of the U.S., there was this thing like the Boston Tea Party and the Revolutionary War and so forth, where they were fighting. They were fighting to remove us from the authority of the monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're fighting to restore the monarchy.
Yeah, we just have King Trump and God forbid that.
But I don't think that they quite. I mean, the people who support Donald Trump don't understand. They don't seem to understand that it's not going to enhance their freedom. They're not going to be more free because they've chosen to allow Trump to assume his, I don't know, he talks about being dictator for one day. I mean,
that'd be a long day.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, what it's really going to, if he got elected, well, even if he didn't get elected, he's going to cash in big time because that's his whole motivation for all this bizarre behavior. Is every time he does these things, people who love him will give their money and just keep on giving, and he's really having to raise lots of money now because of all of his legal fees he's been spending. And that's helped Biden a lot because Biden's been, he doesn't have a whole lot of legal fees like Trump has spent millions and millions just this year.
Oh, yeah.
And he's had to dip into some of his political action committees for support.
All right. I mean, they're draining the coffers, that's for sure. It's hopeful to hear that Biden's got money and Trump doesn't.
Well, Trump will sell you a Bible too.
Yeah.
Have you ordered your Trump Bible there?
I thought about it. I really thought about it. But I didn't do it.
Yeah, I have better things to do with my money, and that's not even in the neighborhood of things I would do.
So we have run out of time.
Yeah.
I'm sad to say.
Well, I enjoy our Babble Fest, and I'm sure people go, "What's wrong with those boys?" We're just guys who enjoy babbling, and we do it quite often.
Yeah, I mean that's what podcasts are for.
Okay, well, Jon,
all right.
I enjoyed it, and you're going to be heading down the trail, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to leave for Santa Fe in a couple of days, and I will see you when I get back.
Enjoy. Thanks,
So
Jon.
stand back and stand by.
Oh, I am.
All right. Adios.
Later, Tater. You can follow the Plutopia News Network at plutopia.io. On Facebook, go to @Plutopia News. On Twitter, it's @Plutopia. With John Lepkowski, I'm Scoop Sweeney. This is the Plutopia News Network, 20 minutes into the future.